Minneapolis tonight, authorities say they are now searching for a man that they allege is seen in a viral video smashing windows and inciting violence after the death of George Floyd. They say he is a white supremacist who wanted to fuel racial unrest.
Tonight, authorities in Minneapolis say they have finally identified the man they claim incited days of violent protest there after George Floyd was killed. Dubbed the Umbrella Man on social media, he was captured in this viral video breaking windows at this AutoZone, dressed in black, holding an umbrella. In a court filing this week, police identifying him as a white supremacist. According to court documents, the man also spray-painted the words "Free Expletive for Everyone Zone" on the business's doors. Not long after, looting and fires began in the area, police say. An officer telling the court, until Umbrella Man, the protests had been relatively peaceful. This individual's sole aim was to incite violence. After a tip, investigators zeroing in on the 32-year-old, police say also a known member of a whites-only motorcycle gang. And David, investigators are working to obtain the man's cell phone location data. At this point, charges have not yet been filed.
When news broke that a member of the Aryan Brotherhood Motorcycle Club may have sparked the Minneapolis riots, CAIR issued a statement. The Minnesota chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations today called for charges to be brought against a 32-year-old white supremacist suspected of vandalizing a Minneapolis auto parts store in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. We denounce the suspected white supremacist vandal and his apparent motive of incitement, said CAIR Minnesota Executive Director Jelani Hussein. But what's the rush? The police have not identified, charged, or arrested anyone. This story is about a request for a search warrant based on a second-hand anonymous tip. But even if it turns out the suspect is the Umbrella Man, to blame the riots on this one person is overreach. The protesters were attacking the police precinct the night before the Umbrella Man struck. When looking for someone to blame, there are plenty of suspects to go around, including CAIR. CAIR inspired the rioters before, during, and after. CAIR was a leader in inciting the public.
But this is systematic. It's happening every day. It's just a different city with a different title, with a different name, another human being. It's the same police force that has been trained to kill. This police officer who actually killed George was there at the rally with President Trump. So we've got racist officers right now working who are committing these crimes wherever you are at. Don't think that this is happening in Minneapolis today. There's someone else in your neighborhood that this police department, your police department in your city, has committed these kind of crimes before. It's the same mentality. This has been happening in this country since slavery, to mass incarceration, to lynching, and to today what we see, this type of brutality. But if you look at the history of this police departments, what the police were doing, they started out as being those who chased down free slaves, those who are trying to free themselves from slavery, right? That's how the police departments were created. And then they became, privatized police, right? So there is a history of how police departments work today. When none of us know right now what could happen to us on any street in Minneapolis when the police department pulls you over for any reason. So we gotta really reform the entire concept of what it is to be a police officer in this world today. If the police are only circling black neighborhoods.
They never condemned the riots, and when the violence subsided, they continued to be a leader in this affair, even though they have nothing to do with George Floyd. In fact, CAIR's response to Minnesota's police reforms was to say on television that Minnesota does not care about black lives and Minnesota killed George Floyd.
Me, as a community leader, to see that the state that killed George Floyd does not want and is not interested in black lives. Minnesota killed George Floyd.
For someone who had such a high profile in the George Floyd affair, he certainly is eager to blame somebody else. But not just anybody else. Contrast the Umbrella Man story with the case of Louise Lucas. Virginia State Senator Louise Lucas kicked off the Portsmouth Confederate Monument protest. There's no question about this. Police body cam shows Lucas telling the police to stand down, that the protesters have authorization to paint the monument and to go ahead. It should have been obvious that the protesters would go too far and try to topple the monument, and this time someone got very badly hurt in the process. Lucas is very indignant. that anyone would hold her responsible for her part in this, and so is CAIR. These excessive and unjust charges seem to be a politically motivated attempt to push back against those who are challenging systemic anti-black racism and white supremacy in our society, said CAIR Deputy Executive Director Edward Ahmed Mitchell. The charges should be reconsidered by independent authorities and amended or withdrawn. Well, where is the evidence for that statement? It sounds like Lucas's defenders, including CAIR, are the ones playing politics. There is much more evidence that Louise Lucas started a series of events that resulted in someone getting hurt than there is that white supremacists started the Minneapolis riots.
Says this body camera footage of Senator Louise Lucas was one of several pieces of evidence reviewed that led to multiple arrest warrants being issued.
But they're going to put some paint on this thing, and y'all cannot arrest them.
Lucas is facing charges of conspiracy to commit a felony and injury to a monument in excess of $1,000, stemming from the June protest that seriously injured Chris Green after a toppled statue fell on him.
We have new police body camera video of a protest at the Confederate Monument in Portsmouth last month. You may remember, got out of hand when a toppled statue seriously hurt a man. Since that night, there's been a lot of finger pointing. A Virginia Beach attorney began a recall petition for Senator Louise Lucas, alleging that she misused her office by telling police to stand down. Senator Lucas answered with a defamation lawsuit.
We've been investigating the events at the Portsmouth Confederate Monument for about a month now. Now we've obtained police body camera video, and we're getting a really good idea. The festive atmosphere last month at the dismantling of the Portsmouth Confederate Monument came to an abrupt halt when a protester was severely injured after part of the statue toppled onto him. Since then, city and state officials have been pointing fingers at each other, trying to figure out how things got to that point. Through the Freedom of Information Act, Senator Side obtained police body camera video from earlier in the afternoon when Senator Louise Lucas first arrived on the scene. She told police protesters were going to paint the statue.
Ma'am, you can't tell them to do that.
I'm telling you to call Dr. Patton. I'm not telling them to do anything. I'm telling you can't arrest them. Call Dr. Patton.
Today, Lucas stands by the conversation she says she had with City Manager Lydia Patton. Lucas has, however, told us that she never urged protesters to vandalize the monument and didn't condone illegal activity. But she is on camera telling officers they can't stop what's about to happen.
But they're going to put some paint on this thing, and y'all cannot arrest them. You need to call Dr. Patton, because they're going to do it. You can't stop it. This is city property. Senator Louise Lucas, by the way.
The next day, Dr. Patton sent an email saying no member of City Council nor elected official gave a directive not to arrest for vandalism. Dr. Patton is neither of those things, but in her email, she solely puts a decision on the police chief. Chief Angela Green doesn't typically wear a body camera, but she did on this day.
You all were not authorized to be on the property.
Well, where's that list of restrictions, though?
They are now. Dr. Patton just gave me permission through me.
Okay,
you need to give her a call.
The last conversation that I had.
I talked to her 15 minutes ago. You need to give her a call.
Okay, and I'll give her a call, but I talked to her like less than 5 minutes ago, and no one is allowed
this is
onto the
city-owned
property.
Lucas was only at the monument for a very short time, and then she left. She was unaware of the events, how they unfolded, until after everything was done.
I felt like I'm in a dream, like I just need to be pinched and everything will just go back to the way it was. His back was turned, so he didn't even know it was coming to even try to move out the way, you know, so he didn't know.
This could have been prevented, you know. I think that
There had been talk about the statue being removed a long time ago. Nothing ever happened.
Days later, he remained sedated in the hospital, unable to speak or open his eyes, but still taking small steps towards recovery after a serious head injury.
That's the good that has come out of it, are the changes that are happening.
This Senator Louise Lucas, by the way. All right, they got it right. Go ahead.
Ma'am, you can't tell them to do that.
I'm telling you to call Dr. Patton. I'm not telling them to do anything. I'm telling you can't arrest them. Call Dr. Patton. I'm going to stand right here.
So I had to make some calls to find out exactly where that order or was coming from. By that time, they were already engaging in the property damage.
It is clear that CAIR approved of the riots and even continue agitating to this very day.
Developing tonight, we are waiting for the grand jury decision in the deadly Ferguson, Missouri shooting of Michael Brown. As the small St. Louis suburb prepares, we've learned that groups like CAIR may be joining in the protests.
Muslim groups are trying to co-opt the Ferguson protest by trying to equate this man, Imam Lukman Ahmed Abdullah, to Michael Brown. The executive director of CAIR's Michigan chapter told fellow organizers, quoting here, "In law enforcement, be it local, state, or federal law enforcement, people with guns have always seen black men and black people as threats."
Well, today, the Oregon chapter for the Council on American Islamic Relations also called for those federal agents to leave Portland. C-Mob Husani says the agents are interfering with people's rights to protest. Husani says the people from his organization who have been out protesting night after night, they say the officers have been the aggressors.
And I've been there for these nights, and we've seen people within the crowd being able to grab a water bottle and throw it out of emotion or whatever enraged passion that happens. And even within the crowd, we regulate those people. So with the escalation has been purely on the side of these federal agents.
But they are also eager to blame others for the riots. More people need to know about CAIR's role in what turned into nationwide rioting. We're not asking you to read any court documents. We're not making an argument from authority. We're not talking about anybody's religion. We are asking you to start paying attention to the Council on American Islamic Relations.